Hello, dear viewer. It's me, Grifter The Noob. I know you've been desperately refreshing YouTube waiting for this episode. Your patience has been adequate. Before we continue our epic adventure in Griftopia, I have an announcement. I'm proud to report that episode 1 has officially begun to go viral. As you can see, my channel is becoming wildly popular. The numbers speak for themselves. I knew that the world would recognize my genius immediately, but I didn't expect to become a famous internet celebrity overnight. I can't even leave the house without being recognized, I assume. I haven't actually left the house to check, but I did see someone walk past my window yesterday, and they definitely glanced in my direction. The attention is almost too much to handle, but this is the life I chose. The important thing now is to stay humble, to not let the fame go to my head. That shouldn't be a problem. I'm very good at being humble. The best, in fact. But fame, money, those things come and go. Let's get back to what really matters in life. Video games. Previously, I single-handedly founded the Kingdom of Griftopia. I built a humble cabin out of stone, added a small library extension. I hung our banner with pride, a symbol of our strength, dominance, bravery, and a crystal-clear message to our enemies. We don't take kindly to chickens. I crushed an entire army of invaders, standing bravely on the roof while the settlers cowered below. Punched Beelzebub multiple times for various transgressions, and begun laying the foundation for what would soon become the greatest empire this land has ever seen. But I would soon come to a terrible realization. There was a traitor among us, and his name, well, let's just say it was awfully close to Beelzebub. And I'm afraid this time, a simple punch wouldn't solve my problem. I'd have to resort to more drastic measures. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's pick up where we left off. The battle was won, thanks to me, but there was cleanup to do. I assumed my settlers would finish gathering the equipment of our enemies, a logical plan that would allow them to armor themselves to the next attack. They once again proved to me that it is impossible to underestimate their intelligence. For some reason, they thought it would be a better idea to sling the enemy's bodies over their shoulders and drag them back to our base, while leaving their equipment to rot on the ground. These people, it's like they run on some kind of script. It's as if every action they perform is dictated by some nebulous list of priorities I have no control over. I mean, one minute they're pissed off about even seeing the bodies, the next minute, literally 60 seconds later, they're dragging them back home to, I don't even know, impress me, like a cat dragging a dead bird into the kitchen. They're enigmas. If there was a stupider word for enigma. Igmas. I'll have to workshop that. Actually, no, that's perfect. That's what I'm calling them from now on. The Igmas of Griftopia. My point is, why couldn't I have gotten normal settlers? These ones were obviously defective. I wonder if they have a return policy. I decided to let them carry on. I didn't have the mental energy to deal with their eccentric life choices. As long as it didn't impact me, I didn't care. Well, dear viewer, that was my first mistake. I came downstairs from my research to find that the settlers had been organizing the bodies of our enemies in my cabin, right next to our food supplies, no less. I briefly considered asking them why they were collecting bodies, but I didn't want to give them an opportunity to engage in their favorite pastimes, being stupid and disappointing me. As you may remember, I was on an involuntary sober streak, and I was in no mood to deal with their shenanigans, but my razor-sharp intellect had already started to put together a new theory. This was not normal stupid settler behavior. This was something else. Something darker. Little did I know just how deep this rabbit hole would go. I was barely scratching the surface, as you'll soon see. I couldn't prove that this little stunt was Beelzebub's idea, but I had a strong suspicion considering that, number 1, Beelzebub is an asshole, and number 2, earlier that day I spotted him out on the battlefield cuddling with one of the bodies of our enemies. Yes, you heard that right. Like I said, enigmas. Igmas. Especially him. If the settlers wanted to collect bodies so badly, so be it. I ordered them to move the corpses to a designated settler decoration pile outside, by their beds, where they'd have a better view. Fortunately, the local wildlife began disposing of the bodies for us. The problem was taking care of itself. Nature's cleanup crew. The circle of life. Beautiful, really. Before we could focus on more important matters, we had to finish the cold storage I'd started beneath our humble cabin. I supervised the final touches. The settlers worked diligently, for once. And not a moment too soon. The crops we'd planted were finally ready to harvest. The flax, which the asshole settlers had initially refused to plant, was thriving, thanks to my leadership, of course. Our food stores were growing. They'd thank me come winter. Everything in its proper place. Organized. Efficient. This was civilization. Every day was one step closer to utopia. I'd been conducting intensive research. Weeks of study. Well, days. Hours, really. The point is, I was on the verge of a breakthrough to rival Einstein's theory of relativity. At long last, I'd unlocked the complex and prestigious art of brewing, a monumental achievement. I immediately ordered construction of our brewery. It would be housed downstairs in my cabin so I could maintain constant supervision. The settlers couldn't be trusted to, I don't know, not take a bath in the beer or something. They'd find something idiotic to do if I didn't keep a close eye on it. There was a slight problem. The settlers had used all of our wood on the cold storage shelves. Every last log. Some might call this poor resource management. I call it stupid settler syndrome. Or maybe IGMA syndrome. Completely incurable, unfortunately. And of course, one of the settlers, you'll never guess who, chose this exact moment to become rebellious. He made quite the scene. Turning purple, playing on my backgammon table, romping around obnoxiously. Apparently, he was upset about the scent of dung, whatever that means. I knew it couldn't have been the donkey dung I intentionally placed by their beds, because I have it on good authority that GrifDonkey's poop smells like roses. A lesser leader would have seen this as a simple tantrum, a narcissistic display. But I saw the pattern. The timing was too perfect. This wasn't selfishness. This was sabotage. I'd been noticing patterns, small things, the way he walked, the way he breathed, the way he looked at me with those eyes. Something about his gaze seemed evil, otherworldly. I set aside my suspicions for the time being and ordered the settlers to gather more lumber. In the rain. Character building, really. I supervised from inside the cabin. Someone had to stay dry and make the important decisions. At long last, the brewery was complete. Garwolf finished the construction. I was happy to see that the affectionate nickname I'd given him after his mining incident had stuck. Even he was capable of following simple instructions. Sometimes. And as if by divine intervention, the barley was ready to harvest. Stage 2 of my master brewing plan had officially commenced. The miserable sober streak was almost over. I began brewing immediately. This required intense concentration, precision, the kind of focus only a master brewer possesses. As I brewed, meditatively, deep in a state of Zen concentration, I had an epiphany. And that epiphany led to a crucial decision. I would institute a no-alcohol policy for the settlers, effective immediately. I cared deeply for their health and well-being. Alcohol contains harmful toxins, impairs judgment. They needed to stay sharp. Well, as sharp as possible. I, of course, as an enlightened being of higher intelligence, am immune to alcohol's negative effects. My brain and liver are simply more evolved. It's basic science. But the settlers, they had such little intelligence to spare. Impairing them anymore would just be cruel. And finally, after weeks of sobriety, I took my first sip of Griftopian ale. It was magnificent. Perhaps the best beer I'd ever tasted. Or perhaps I'd just forgotten what beer tasted like. Either way, the sober streak was over. Life was good again. With our beer situation sorted, I decided that I'd earn a vacation. The settlers could handle the base for a while. I needed time to recharge, to reflect. As I relaxed, I had a lot of time to contemplate. I can't help it, I'm a very introspective person. I reflected on our journey so far, my actions as a leader, and I realized I'd done wrong by one of my settlers. I'd been inconsiderate. Some would even say cruel, unreasonable. Perhaps I'd underestimated this settler's character. Well, a good leader knows when to admit when he's wrong. I'm a man of principle, if nothing else, and I was committed to making it right. GrifDonkey deserved better. Unlike certain settlers who shall remain nameless, GrifDonkey had never betrayed me. Never used my table without permission. Never trapped himself on a rock like an idiot. Yet he was forced to sleep on the floor of my humble cabin like a common peasant. This injustice could not stand. I decided that he deserved a title, official recognition of his loyalty and service. By the power vested in me, by me, I declared GrifDonkey the official Duke of Griftopia. I held a brief coronation ceremony, just the two of us. Very exclusive. The IGMAs weren't invited. They wouldn't understand the significance anyway. And of course, a duke requires proper accommodations, a palace befitting his nobility. I began drafting the blueprints immediately. It'd have to be spacious, practical yet luxurious. He'd need room to stretch his legs and a table upon which to conduct important ducal business for Griftopia. After several hours of intensive drafting, I had the initial blueprints planned. I'd laid them out perfectly. Now it was up to the settlers to not screw up construction. One day we'd have a mighty tower for Duke GrifDonkey to call home. But for now, our humble cabin was all it could offer. But it would have to do. Construction began immediately. The settlers worked through the night. At least, I think they did. I was asleep. Normal people sleep at night. The settlers did whatever they did. I gave up on trying to keep track of their odd habits. As the days went on, I supervised occasionally, from a distance. I thought that giving them independence might improve their critical thinking skills. I was incorrect. As the structure rose, I noticed something troubling. The settlers had added extensive internal support. Pillars everywhere, beams cluttering the interior. They'd clearly cut corners somewhere during construction. The structural integrity was questionable. But I didn't have time to micromanage every detail. Duke GrifDonkey needed his room, and he needed it now. The structural issues would have to wait. In fact, the settlers' incompetence was becoming dangerous. My research desk collapsed. Twice. A hole formed in the floor due to compromised structural integrity. I could have been badly injured. At this point, I was beginning to suspect sabotage. Or perhaps a more spiritually nefarious interference. Beelzebub had been in the cabin earlier. Coincidence? I think not. But I persevered. rebuilt, continued my work. If the settlers thought that destroying my research desk would somehow get them a day off from constructing Duke GrifDonkey's palace, they were badly mistaken. Our packaged meals were running low, dangerously low. In fact, we only had 61 remaining. I'd carefully planned to bring enough supplies to last us through the winter, but the settlers were obviously gluttons. It was a wonder they weren't all fat. I was responsible for not letting that happen. Luckily for them, I'm a very resourceful leader. As a master nutritionist, I developed a comprehensive dietary plan that would solve all of our problems. With our food stores now stocked, they would transition to an organic, all-natural diet of raw vegetables. Fresh from the earth, unprocessed, pure, the healthiest option available. I even created a custom meal plan to ensure optimal nutrition. Every detail considered, every need met. Some of them tried cooking the vegetables. I put a stop to that immediately. Cooking destroys nutrients and character. They were really enjoying their new diet. I could tell by the way they chewed. Very enthusiastic chewing. Almost aggressive, really, but that's probably just excitement. I, of course, would sacrifice myself by consuming the remaining packaged meals. I knew how to moderate myself. I would never allow myself to get fat. Besides, I had to protect them from harmful preservatives, chemicals, toxins. Who knows what was in those packaged meals? It was the least I could do. A true leader puts his people first. A new settler arrived, Magota, badly injured, but she came equipped with a crossbow. Finally, a settler with some sense, some preparation. I had high hopes for her. Perhaps she'd be a cut above the other Igmas. Break the mold. During her first 15 seconds as a citizen of Griftopia, she helped herself to my packaged meals and my infirmary bed, without permission. My hopes were immediately dashed. A gentle correction was administered before I sent her outside with the others. Obviously, the bed was tarnished. There was no way I could use it after she'd gotten her settler germs all over it. I had it moved outside too. Problem solved. Duke GrifDonkey's palace was nearing completion. I eagerly awaited his reaction. I showed him the space, the result of many long minutes of careful planning, drafting, supervising. But he simply walked in, looked around, and left immediately. He didn't even give it a chance. He was in there for exactly 4 seconds. I timed it. First, I was confused. Then I realized the structural issues. All those support beams cluttering the interior. The settlers had clearly cut corners during construction. I couldn't blame Duke GrifDonkey for rejecting it. He had refined and noble tastes. The room needed proper furnishings, luxury befitting his status. I began researching immediately. Advanced furniture, decorations, rugs, the kind of craftsmanship that separates a hovel from a noble dwelling. The research was complete. Now came the real work, transforming Duke GrifDonkey's quarters into a true palace. I also partitioned off a small section of the Duke's palace for my personal workshop. Just a corner, a place where I could craft armor, weapons, and most importantly, furniture for his new home. The production speed bonus was considerable. Duke GrifDonkey didn't mind sharing. He was generous like that. But before we could begin furnishing the new palace, we needed more lumber. We always needed more lumber. Sometimes I wondered what the settlers did with it all. Crafting dark idols for Beelzebub's witchcraft, perhaps. I made a mental note to check under their beds at some point. The settlers gathered materials while I crafted the furnishings myself. They were simply too, stupid for fine craftsmanship. We placed the rugs, mounted decorations, each piece carefully selected. Duke GrifDonkey watched as I worked. He understood the effort I was putting in for him. At long last, Duke GrifDonkey's palace was complete. Luxurious. Perfect. I'd spared no expense. But, of course, the universe couldn't let me enjoy this moment for more than 30 seconds. A massive raiding party approached, even larger than the first. I assessed the situation quickly. The settlers had left all the enemy equipment on the battlefield from our previous victory. Armor, weapons, everything. Because apparently gathering corpses was more important than arming themselves for the next inevitable attack. I had no choice. I ordered them inside, garrisoned in the cabin, all of them. Well, almost all of them. Magota had a crossbow. I positioned her on the wall, with me. At least one settler had come prepared. Beelzebub, of course, refused to fight. He became rebellious during the attack, deliberately disobeying my commands. While we fought for our lives, he wandered around in the cellar, hiding, or perhaps communing with his master, praying for our defeat. We defended Griftopia together, 2 warriors against an army. The odds were not in our favor, but we prevailed. I sustained heavy injuries, grievous wounds. I nearly died up there, but I persevered, because that's what leaders do. Magota fought bravely, a true warrior. Perhaps I'd been too harsh with her earlier. The punch was possibly unnecessary, in hindsight. But the bed thing was still unacceptable. The settlement was safe. Duke GrifDonkey's palace was protected. He rested peacefully that night. For the first time since we arrived, he finally had the bare essentials of comfort. At last, everything was right in my settlement, and my guilty conscience was able to rest too. The room was finally complete, but there was a problem. The settlers kept using Duke GrifDonkey's bed. Mark was the first. He just walked right in like he owned the place and took a nap, without even asking for the Duke's permission. The audacity was staggering. I tried reasoning with him, appealing to his morality, explaining logically that what he was doing was wrong. Then Garwolf tried the same thing. They simply couldn't respect boundaries. It was exhausting, but I remained vigilant. Our Duke's comfort was worth any amount of effort. Eventually, I made an executive decision. I would assign the bed to myself, not because I wanted it, but to protect it, to keep it safe for Duke GrifDonkey, a guardian, if you will. Duke GrifDonkey understood. He preferred sleeping on the floor anyway, closer to the ground, more tactical. After I had assigned the bed to myself, I went downstairs to check on the settler's progress. And that's when I saw him, Beelzebub, wandering around in the cellar again. He sure did like to spend time underground, almost like he was drawn to it. Comfortable down there, in the dark. And he wasn't alone. Multiple settlers had gathered with him, in the basement, rebellious. All of them whispering, plotting. I couldn't make out the words, but I definitely heard someone say Grifter, or maybe Drifter, or possibly Fritter. The acoustics down there are terrible, but it was definitely about me. Beelzebub was at the center, the ringleader. I watched from the stairs, observing them carefully. I needed to think, to process what I just witnessed. This wasn't simple witchcraft. It was something else entirely. I was conducting my research when it hit me. Beelzebub. Beelzebub. Wait. Beelzebub. My God, it had been right in front of me the entire time. The evidence was overwhelming. My mind raced as I put the pieces together. The table incidents, the bed stealing. I caught him once, just standing there, watching me sleep in the middle of the night. Pure evil. What kind of person does that? A demon, that's who. And then there was the body. I'd found him cuddling an enemy corpse during one of his rebellious episodes. Cuddling it, like some kind of necromantic ritual. He'd even gained a perk. Brawler. Was he training? Preparing for combat? Looking for a fight? The signs were everywhere. How could I have been so blind? He became rebellious at the slightest inconvenience. The scent of dung, apparently. He took a break every 12 minutes. 12 divided by 2 is 6. He'd used my backgammon table 6 times over the past 6 days. The number of the beast. He'd been laying out breadcrumbs all along, thinking I was too stupid to notice. A demon wouldn't want to contribute to society. Wouldn't want to help build our utopia. He despised manual labor. Became irritable. Lazy. Clearly demonic influence. And then I noticed something even more disturbing. Beelzebub had befriended Muriel. Was he recruiting? Building an army? Spreading his demonic influence through the settlement? This settler wasn't just a troublemaker. He was Satan incarnate. Beelzebub, the demon of gluttony and envy. It made complete sense. The settlers' constant hunger, gluttony, their obsession with my table, my bed, my things, envy. They weren't just stupid, they were possessed, corrupted by Beelzebub's demonic influence from the very beginning. He was the cause of all of my problems. The settlers rebelling, the settlers being so stupid all the time, the settlers using my personal space and complaining about their luxurious living situation. He'd clearly sunk his demonic tendrils into their brains. If I wanted my settlement back, I would have to deal with him. Permanently. Exorcise the demon. Free my people from his grip. And I knew exactly how to do it. We'd been mining for stone, essential materials for Duke GrifDonkey's palace. The settlers had been digging for days, 2 layers deep, maybe 3. And then it hit me. This wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was the solution to all of my problems. In fact, if I played my cards right, it could allow me to end Beelzebub's treachery once and for all. I ordered the settlers to dig deeper. Much deeper. If my plan was to have any chance of working, we'd have to mine all the way to bedrock. The settlers worked tirelessly, digging, mining, excavating their way to the granite below. This would be my greatest strategic maneuver yet, if I could pull it off. But it would be tricky. Beelzebub the demon was cunning, after all. I could tell that he was starting to become suspicious, but I was always one step ahead. I assigned him to extra digging shifts to keep him distracted. It was a perfect 2-pronged strategy. Accelerate construction of my project and keep the demon occupied with manual labor. He hated manual labor. Little did the demon know he was working towards his own demise. Every shovel of dirt bringing him just a little bit closer to home. Dear viewer, if you were to tell me I'd find myself in this situation when I founded Griftopia, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have closed out of the game and played Hello Kitty Island Adventure instead. I came to this land to innocently lay waste to kingdoms, yet I found myself locked in an epic game of chess with an otherworldly being. Every move calculated, every counter move anticipated. But he underestimated me. That was his fatal mistake. After all, I'm a master of chess, and backgammon, and checkers. Basically all board games that require strategic thinking. At long last, Garwolf mined the final block. The hole was complete, deep, secure. It was exactly 17 feet deep. I measured, twice. Then I had Garwolf measure it. Then I measured it again because I don't trust Garwolf's counting abilities. 17 feet. The perfect depth for demon containment, according to my calculations. I furnished it with the bare essentials. Food, a bed, a torch. Anything more would feed the demon's gluttony, make him stronger. I know what you're thinking. Grifter, you're far too generous. I know. Most leaders would have executed a demon on sight, or simply banished it to the wild to fend for itself. But I had a reputation to uphold. The settlers saw me as merciful, generous, compassionate. I couldn't risk tarnishing their image of me. Besides, I'm sure he'd like it down there, closer to his kind, in hell. I installed the door, locked of course. The demon couldn't be trusted to stay put voluntarily. There was just one more thing I needed to complete my plan. I had to wait for Beelzebub to slip up, to reveal himself. I needed him to do something truly evil. Otherwise, the settlers would think I was some kind of tyrant. He turned them against me if given the opportunity. I needed to be patient, strategic. The demon would slip up eventually. They always do. As it turned out, I didn't have to wait long. One night I was up late, conducting my research. I went upstairs to ask GrifDonkey for his opinion on a new theorem I'd been working on, and that's when I discovered him. Beelzebub in Duke GrifDonkey's bed, using it without permission. He'd even adjusted the pillow. The pillow! That was GrifDonkey's pillow, positioned at GrifDonkey's preferred angle, exactly 37 degrees. I'd measured it myself, twice. The violation was complete. The demon had finally revealed his true nature. He wasn't just sabotaging me anymore. He was targeting GrifDonkey, the most beloved, noble, innocent soul in all of Griftopia. The settlers would understand. He'd gone too far. I could have acted immediately. Punched him right there. It took every ounce of my considerable restraint not to do exactly that. But no. This required something more. Something cinematic. I would wait for the perfect moment. And then when that moment came, Beelzebub would learn what happens when you cross Grifter the Noob. And more importantly, what happens when you disrespect the Duke of Griftopia. I decided to give Beelzebub a special project. A chair, to be built in the edge of the hole. A comfortable place where I could sit and monitor his demonic activities. Document his transgressions. After all, history would remember me not only as a king and a scholar, but as a conqueror of demons. He would build it himself. Fitting, really. The demon constructing the instrument of his own surveillance. He didn't know it yet, but he was building a chair he'd never sit in. As I watched him work, I reflected on his crimes. The table, 17 documented incidents. The bed, 23 violations. GrifDonkey's sacred space, unforgivable. While we didn't have clocks, I mentally calculated that he took a break every 66 minutes, 6 times a day. The number of the beast, yet again. And now, here he was, vulnerable, his back turned, building a chair for his own imprisonment. The moment was perfect. The rain had just begun. I'd always imagined my climactic battle would be in the rain. I had practiced this speech 17 times in the mirror. Well, we don't have mirrors, but I practiced at my reflection in a puddle. The delivery was flawless. It was time to make my stand. I approached slowly, deliberately, each step measured, exactly 18 inches apart. I'd been practicing my hero walk for weeks. The demon was focused on his work, oblivious, exactly as planned. Beelzebub! Traitor! I know what you've done. I know what you are, Beelzebub. Or should I say, Beelzebub. You thought you could corrupt my people, sabotage my settlement, sow seeds of corruption for your master. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The table incidents, 17 of them. The bed violations, 23. The body cuddling, the basement gatherings, the rebellions, 73 total. I counted every single one. I documented everything, demon. Every transgression, every glance, every suspicious breath. I'll admit, you were clever, but you made one critical error. You underestimated me. You thought I was just another weak human leader you could manipulate and abuse. But you forgot one thing. I am strong, and I am not a chicken. This one's for GrifDonkey! I punched him. Hard. Some would say I punched the demon out of him that day, but I know better. You can't punch out what's fundamentally part of someone's nature. But you can certainly try. He fell unconscious immediately. The game had been won. Justice had been served. The punch lasted exactly 0.7 seconds. The fall, 1.3 seconds. Total confrontation time, 2 seconds. Efficient. When he woke up, he found himself in the containment zone, locked in. My epic fantasy involved punching him directly into the hole, but sometimes things just don't play out the way you want them to. I had Gerald carry him in there instead. I supervised, of course. I had to make sure he was placed correctly, facing south. Demons are weaker when facing south. I read that somewhere, or maybe I made it up. Either way, south. The demon's reign of terror was over, for now. He'd spend his nights down there, his days too, in the dark, 17 feet underground, closer to hell, where he belonged. I made sure the door was secure, locked. I checked it 6 times, then I had Gerald check it. Then I checked it again myself because I don't trust Gerald's door-checking abilities. The demon wouldn't escape, not on my watch. The settlers watched in silence. I could see it in their eyes. Fear, respect, perhaps a hint of relief. All I could do now was pray that the demon's grip on them would loosen. Even if they continued their demonic practices, at least now they understood. This is what happens when you cross Grifter the Noob. When you threaten what I've built. When you disrespect a Duke. I noticed them gathering afterwards, whispering, plotting perhaps. I couldn't make out the words, but I definitely heard someone say grifter, or maybe lifter, or possibly farmer. The acoustics over there were terrible, but it was definitely about me. Everything is always about me. But I wasn't concerned. Let them plot. I dealt with a powerful demon. The rest were just settlers, igmas, manageable. Definitely not demons. Probably. But my work was far from over. Winter was approaching. The settlers were growing restless. The organic diet was not as popular as I'd anticipated. Rebellion count for this week alone, 47. I was keeping track. And Beelzebub, I could see it in his eyes. Even from 17 feet above. Even in the dark. This wasn't over. The demon was contained, but for how long? Wooden doors don't last forever, and neither does fear. Griftopia had survived another day, another crisis, a demon in the flesh. But winter was coming, and with it, new challenges, new threats, new opportunities for the settlers to disappoint me. But that's all the time we have for today, dear viewer. Subscribe to the channel, or I'll assign you to permanent hole-digging duty with Beelzebub in the dark, 17 feet underground. Your choice!
They call me Grifter the Noob online, but every match I wreck, I own the fight. Level up quick, beat the leaderboard, rush the spawn point.